Just a minute. So yes, starting off with leadership. So leadership is nothing but one single individual leading over a group of people. So it is an art of motivating a common group of people to act towards achieving a common goal. So the process of encouraging and helping others to work enthusiastically towards objectives. So as rightly stated by Alan Kate, leadership is ultimately about creating a way for people to contribute to making something extraordinary happen. So what should be the criteria of leadership? So what is the basic essentials of leadership is it refers to the ability of one individual to influence others. The influence is exercised to change the behavior of others. And it should change the behavior which is caused with an objective of achieving a shared goal. The person influencing others, that is the leader, should possess a set of qualities or characteristics with which he or she should influence others. So it is a group phenomenon which involves interaction between two or more people. So what makes a difference between a leadership and management? So in both the criteria, one individual is having control over the entire group. But the difference is in case of management, it is a process of planning, organizing, coordinating, directing, and controlling the activities of others. Whereas in leadership, you can say it is the process of influencing for the purpose of achieving shared goals. So in management, it involves a lot of activities. It is a something like coping with complexities. So he has like various roles to play. Whereas in leadership, it is only the coping up with the change of. So why this is important? Importance of leadership is it transforms the potentiality into reality. For example, I can tell you many people in an organization will have like different levels of potentialities. But when it comes to execution, they fail so. So it is the leadership which transforms the potentiality into reality. So leadership is not mere using people and their potential for realizing an organization goals. So keep this in mind. It is not just utilized for the purpose of raising the potentialities inside an organization, but it has also the ultimate aim of raising the level of human conduct and ethical aspiration of both the leader and the led. So the leader should elevate, inspire, and evangelize. So he must be a role model to his members, basically. So he himself must elevate himself and he should inspire others and he must convert other people so that the organization's level will really go up. So coming to styles of leadership, we have like basically four styles, that is formal and informal leadership, autocratic or authoritarian style, participative or democratic style, and laissez-faire or free rein style. So in case of like formal and informal leadership, so formal leadership, it just occurs when a manager leads by exercising formal authority. So this exercise of formal authority through assigning duties derives from the manager's official position within the organization's hierarchy of authority. So any employee, any worker who's assigned a managerial position has the opportunity and responsibility to exercise formal leadership. In case of informal leadership, it arises when a person without formal authority is influential in directing the behaviors of others. So although it is not formally. Coming to autocratic or authoritarian style. So under this style, basically there is an autocratic leadership who has the all the decision making powers which are centralized, and he is a otherwise called as a dictating leader. So he do not entertain any suggestions or initiatives from his subordinates. So the autocratic management has been successful as it provides strong motivation to the manager. It also permits quick decision making as only one person decides for the whole group and keeps each decision to himself until he feels it as it needed to be shared with the rest of the group. So this is the only advantage in case of autocratic style. So the decision making process will be quick. And the higher degree of dependency on the leader is a kind of disadvantage in case of autocratic style. It may be valuable in some types of business where decisions need to be made quickly and decisively. Coming to participative or democratic style, the democratic leadership style favors decision making by the group. So all the members in the group is at the liberty to give their opinions, to share their views, and to make decisions. So they can win the cooperation of the group and can motivate them effectively and positively. The decisions of the democratic leader are not unilateral as with the autocrat because they arise from the consultation with the group members and the participation by them. So basically it has like two elements, consultative and persuasive. So the process of consultation will be done before each and every decisions are taken. And the leader takes decision and seeks to persuade others than whether the decision is correct or not. Coming to laissez-faire or free rein style. So this is a common term which you all know. So a free rein leader does not lead but leaves the group entirely to itself such a leader to allow maximum freedom to the subordinates. That is, they are given a free hand in deciding their own policies and methods. So it can be very useful in business where creative ideas are important, and it can be highly motivational as people have control over their working life. And it can make coordination and decision making time consuming and lacking in overall direction. So this is the greatest disadvantage in case of free rein style. So there will not be a proper control, and each one of them will work according to their own opinions, and it relies on a very good teamwork. So this is basically based on the task of various people on emphasis. So you can see in the x-axis it is the task emphasis, and in the y-axis it is the people emphasis. So how in case of like supporting style, so high relationships will be maintained among the employer and employee, and whereas the task will be in a lower criteria. Whereas in participative style, you can see high task as well as the high relationship will be maintained among the employers and employee. Whereas in free rein style, task will be very low, but the relationship will be, and also the relationship will be low. Whereas in autocratic style, task will be very high and the relationship will be maintained in a very lower manner. So based on these assumptions of the people, MacGregor, he has formed like two theories. This theory X and theory Y. In theory X, they distrust people and believe in close supervision and tight control over the subordinates. They don't basically trust the workers. So the decisions will be taken only by the leaders. Whereas in theory Y, they are participative, trust the subordinates, and allow them to participate in decision making. And this is another entrepreneurship leadership style. So a heavy task orientation combined with a very direct approach to give instruction to its employees will be followed under this entrepreneurship leadership style. A charismatic personality that inspires others to do business with him. So basically an entrepreneur should be should have a style to let others also should to develop. So a much stronger interest in dealing with the customers than the employees. So basically his target is the customers and not his subordinates. So a strong dislike for bureaucratic rules and regulations will be followed, and anxiety to consolidate business gains will be as quickly as possible. So coming to the theories of leadership, we have like four theories, that is trait theory, leader behavior theory, the managerial grid, and the contingency theories. So coming to trait theory, it basically focuses on the individual characteristics of the successful leaders. So leaders possesses a set of traits which makes them distinct from the follower. So as said by Ralph Stockdale, a strong desire for accomplishment, creativity and intelligence, initiative, high tolerance, and ability to influence others. So these are the factors which a leader should have, which a leader should have as a trait. So following those traits, a leadership quality will be determined. And second one is the behavioral theory. So it mainly focuses on the behaviors of the actual leaders, that is so-called leaders. So any individuals can just focus or just follow the behaviors of the actual leaders. So and it determines how various kinds of specific leaders and the behavior affect the performance and the satisfaction of followers. Coming to managerial grid. So this was initially identified by Black and Moton. So it is nothing but a graphical representation of two views of leadership style. So either a leader will be more focusing on the concern for the people or for the concern for the production. If he's going to focus only on the concern for production, then he may not have a proper relationship with the people who are working under him. Or if he has more concern for the people, then obviously production level will be less. But there are instances where both the criterias are being maintained. So this grid identifies basically 5 basic styles of leadership. So you can see in this graphical representation, the x-axis is for the concern for the people and the y-axis is the concern for production. So basically you can see there are like 5 styles of this leadership. So 1,1 is basically wherein a leadership has very less concern for the people as well as less concern for the production. And 1,9 is the is where a leader has the very lowest concern for the people but highest concern for the production. And similarly this side it's 9,1 is he has a very highest concern for the people but less in case when it comes to production. And the other one is 9,1 is where he has a higher rate of production but less strength of people, concern for people. But there is also an intermediate, this 5,5 is where he will have like both concern for the people and his production will also be carried simultaneously. So coming to contingency theory, so behavior of leader depends upon the character of the situation the leader is in. So he's basically being controlled by the conditions. He himself could not decide whether he has to follow the concern for the people or for the concern for the production. So he himself is being bounded by certain conditions. So it implies under what conditions will employee oriented leadership will be effective and under what type of conditions production oriented leadership be more effective. So the most popular theories under this contingency theory is Fiedler's contingency model and path global theory. So Fiedler's contingency model is nothing but it is like a cycle, wherein a leadership style is dependent on the situation variables. In turn, this situation variables is based on the relationships between the styles and the situations. And again, this relationship is based on the leadership style. So it is something like a cycle. Whereas in case of path goal theory, it is based on specifying a leader's style or behavior that best fits the employer and work environment in order to achieve the goal. Clear? So next coming to group dynamics. So basically what is dynamic? When do we exactly term a person, refer a person that he or she is too dynamic? When he or she is very forceful and very efficient in completing the task assigned to him or her. So dynamic is literally nothing but force and it refers to the forces operating in the group. So it's concerned with the dynamic interaction of individuals in face-to-face relationships. So as a leader, understanding the group dynamic is essential in order to both compose and guide the individuals within a group for the purpose of successful and efficiently completing an assignment. So the definition for group dynamics is it is a social process by which people interact face to face in small groups, a branch of social psychology which studies problems involving the structure of a group, and it is an interaction that influences the attitudes and behavior of the people when they are grouped with the other through either choice or accidental circumstances. So the main objectives of this group dynamics are it is to identify and analyze the social process that impact on group development and performance, and also to acquire the skill necessary to intervene and improve individual and group performance in an organizational context, and also to build more successful organization by applying techniques by that provides positive impact on a goal achievement. So it is something where an entire group is being led by a leader in a dynamic way. So the principles of group dynamics are the members of the group must have a strong sense of belonging to the group. So it is not just the responsibility of the leader of the group. It is a joint responsibility of the all the members in a group to attain or to achieve the goal given to them. So the changes in one part of the group may produce stress in the other person, so which can be reduced only by eliminating or allowing the change by bringing about readjustment in the related parts. So we cannot expect like all the members will have the same views and same opinions, but when one's opinion disturbs others, so it is up to like reduction or by eliminating or allowing those changes or to readjust the essentials inside a group. Okay, so the group arises and functions owing to the common motive. So the entire group, if a group functions and if it wants to have a dynamic nature, then obviously the goal must be a common one. So group survives by placing the members into the functional hierarchy and facilitating the action towards the goals. So the intergroup relations or group organizations and the member participation are essential for effectiveness of a group. So as I told you, the contribution of all the members in a group is very essential for a group dynamic. So information relating to the need for change or plan and change and consequences of the changes must be shared by the members of the group. So it is something like a teamwork. So the curative factors of the group dynamics are, as rightly identified by Yalom 1985, that individuals can achieve through an interpersonal relationships within group. That is, he has like identified 11 curative factors. That is installation of hope, universality, the imparting of information, altruism, development of socializing techniques, imitative behavior, interpersonal learning, group cohesiveness, catharsis, and existential factors. Clear? And elements. What should be the elements inside a group? So basically communication. So without communication, nothing is possible to achieve with a group. And the content versus process. So basically the contents, their availabilities, their facilitations, and the process, thought process should be common inside a group. And the decision making power, influence, and the task versus relationship. So it is not just for attaining all the tasks, but the relationship inside a group should be smooth. So basically there are three theories for group development. That is a classic theory, social exchange theory, and social identity theory. So a classic theory is developed by George Homans, who suggests that group develop based on activities, interactions, and sentiments. So each and every activity inside a group could run only with proper communication and the respect towards the other persons in the group. So basically, this theory means that when individuals share common activities, they will have more interaction and will develop attitudes, either positive attitude or negative attitudes towards each other. And the major element in this theory is the interactions of individuals involved. Coming to social exchange theory, it offers an alternative explanation for the group development. So according to this theory, individuals forms relationships based on the implied expectation of mutually beneficial exchanges based on trust and felt obligation. Thus, a perception that exchange relationships will be positive is often reinforced by the individuals involved. So coming to social identity theory, it offers another explanation for group formation. So simply put, this theory suggests that individuals get a sense of identity and self-esteem based upon their membership in salient groups. So the nature of the group may be demographically based or culturally based or organizationally based. So individuals are motivated to belong to and contribute to identify groups because of the sense of belongingness and self-worth membership in the group imparts. So apart from these three theories, we do have like the Stuckman's theory, which brought a very major change. That is, he has introduced like 5 stages of group development. That is forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. So during these stages, group members must address several issues, and the way in which these issues are resolved, it determines whether the group will succeed in accomplishing its task. So the first stage is forming. So initially, for every new step, we need to form a group. So this stage will have lots of confusion and uncertainty. Say for an example, like inception of a new group, they'll not have clarity as to what is their exact task, and they'll be like very uncertain like how to travel in their goal path. So the major goals of the group have not been established. So the nature of the task or leadership of the group has not been determined. Thus, forming is an orientation period when members get to know one another and share expectations about the group. So the members lean the purpose of the group as well as the rules to be followed. Excuse me. So the forming stage should not be rushed because trust and openness must be developed. So these feelings strengthen in later stages of development. Individuals are often confused during this stage because roles are not clear and they may not be a strong leader. Second stage is storming. So in this stage, the group is likely to see the highest level of disagreement and conflict. So once after the group has been formed, later each one will come forward with their own views and opinions. So there is a high level of possibility of conflict. So members often challenge group goals and struggle for power. And individuals often vie for the leadership position during this stage of development. So everyone wants to become a leader in a group. So third stage is norming. Excuse me. So this stage is characterized by the recognition of individual differences and shared expectations. So hopefully at this stage, the group members will begin to develop a feeling of group cohesion and identity, and cooperative effort should be begin to yield results. So responsibilities are divided among members and the group decides how it will evaluate progress. The fourth stage is performing. Performing occurs when the group has matured and attains a feeling of cohesiveness. So during this stage of development, individuals accept one another and conflict is resolved through group discussion. So members of the group make decisions through a rational process, and that is focused on relevant goals rather than emotional issues. So here there is less possibility for conflict because based on rational process, based on logical sense and analytical sense, the group will be traveling. The fifth stage is adjourning. So not all the groups experience this stage of development because it is characterized by the disbandment of the group. So some groups are relatively permanent because reasons are that groups disband vary, common reasons being the accomplishment of the task or individuals deciding to go to their own ways. So the members of the group often experience feelings of closure and sadness as they prepare to leave. So what is the role of the group leader in a group dynamics? A person who is not in a position of the authority, who is outranked and is new to the organization can still be a leader. So the leadership is not based on the seniority, but it is based only on its dynamic nature. So managing or leading refers to a person's ability to successfully lead a group of people. And organizations have realized that more leading characteristics are needed to be more competitive in the work world. So this is team building. So all these concepts are interlinked. You can see interpersonal relationships or group dynamics, and now this is team building. All these are interrelated concepts. So it is an input to productivity. So basically what is team? So team means a lot. It has like various meanings, but T is for training, E is for encourage, A for aim, and M for motivation. So together, everyone achieve more in the team. So the process of working with a team to clarify its task and how team members can work together to achieve it. So it is a strategy that can help groups to develop into a real team is a team building. So it has like four main advantages I can tell you, that is focus on contribution, to develop a participatory role, to promote team responsibility, and to establish objective together. So the essential key actions which is required in a team building is setting and maintaining the teams with objectives and standards, and involving the team as a whole in the achievement of the objective. So as I told you, the responsibility of all the members in the team is very essential, and maintaining the unity of the team and communicating efficiently with the team. So interaction among the team is very essential. And lastly, consulting the team members before taking any decisions. So the key roles in a team building are motivation, unity and diversity, broader perspective, goal orientation, and determination, without which a successful team cannot function. So you can see the very advantage of a team is keeping the peace, friendliness, enthusiasm, feedback, generating ideas, initiative, solving problems, appropriate humor, seeking approval, and encouraging others. So the key factors to successful performance of a team is score. So it is nothing but strategy, clear roles and responsibilities, open communication, rapid response, and effective leadership. So strategy, as far as strategy is concerned, so as I told you, even at the time of inception of a team, it should have a proper uh, thought process as to how the team should travel. So it is for the shared purpose, and it should clearly articulated values and ground rules. It should be in an understanding of risk and opportunities facing the team, and clear categorization of overall responsibilities of the team, and to measure the individual results. And this should be the strategy of a team. Going to clear roles and responsibility. So there should be a clear definitions of roles and responsibilities of each and every members inside the team. So and responsibility should be shared among all the members, and the team should work with a specific objective. Open communication. So respect for individual differences. So as I told you, inside a team, it is not mandatory that everyone should have a common views and thought process. But the differences of opinion should be respected inside a team. So the open communication environment among team members is very essential. Instead of like betraying, instead of like digging, like every members in the team should have an open interaction, open communication. Thereby the task can be accomplished. And next one is rapid response. So rapid response to team's problem and effective management to change in the internal and external environment is essential. And effective leadership. So team leader who is able to help members should achieve the objective and building the team. So he should have the responsibility to carry forward the team in a very smooth manner. And the team leaders should have a who can draw out and free up the skills of all the team members should develop individuals. And next is what will be the common need of the team is the overriding need of all the people working for the same organization. So to make the organization profit, apart from everything, so why organization is functioning is just to make profits out of it. So how this profit can be attained is, and how this task can be accomplished is only when there is a team spirit and when there is a unity among the members of the team. So the importance of this team buildings is it leads one's minds to creativity, it encourages everyone to take initiative, and it is a combined effort to a single target. It provides space for individual growth and it broadens everyone's vision. And it rewards and recognitions moves side by sides. Right? But the impact of team building activity is like it grooms each and everyone's personality. Basically, when a team functions and when it works towards a common goal, everybody's personality is being groomed and everybody's vision has been broadened, and the feeling of we will flourish. It is not I, it is we which will flourish, and it developing trust among the co-workers. And apart from all, the sense of responsibility will be developed instead of blaming. So as I told you, all the members of the team will have a sense of responsibility. So nobody should like blame others for the failures. So unity is a very essential criteria in case of teamwork or a group work, etc. So passionate hearts committed to a shared vision can accomplish the impossible. So I have a beautiful quote for you people. So coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress and working together is success. So again, this is a new concept which is again interlinked with this team or group work, that is interpersonal relationships. So interpersonal relationship is the concept is basically it involves the social associations, connections or affiliations between two or more people. And such people may interact overtly, covertly, face to face, or may remain effectively unknown to each other. Over 90% of all the failed relationships results from a lack of honest communication and awareness. And the ultimate source of interpersonal is intrapersonal communication. So communication within ourselves. So first that is essential. So what lies within each person and how each person communicates internally provides the source of meaning of self-definition and self-presentation in interpersonal relationships. So the stages basically there are like 4 stages in interpersonal relationships. So first one is contact, second one is involvement, third one is intimacy, and fourth one is deterioration. So contact, it is basically when you see a person freshly or newly, so how do you have contact with that person? So first one is perceptual, noticing how that party look at each other and their body language. So how do you see a person and how your body language is being carried out? And interactional cues, it is not a verbal interaction but it's just a cues like nodding or maintaining eye contact, etc. The third one is invitational. When you give some comfort to the other person and when you invite him to have an interaction with you, like encouraging the potential relationship. For example, suggesting a later meaning involving some social lubricant like serving coffee, etc. And avoidance strategies. So if one person discloses and the other does not, it is a minimal response or the lack of eye contact, etc. So second one is involvement, not by just looking into a person, but basically both of them should have an intention to build up their relationship. So the feelers should hint, should give them certain kinds of hints or like question, may raise some questions like asking about their family or talking something which is very general. So second one is intensifying strategies. So furthering the relationships, example, meeting an old friend or bringing the other person to meet the family or becoming more affectionate, etc. And the third one is public. So parties seen in public together often, if in a romantic relationship, may involve even holding their hands. So the third stage is intimacy. So when both the parties become close together, so that is intimacy. So parties very close may have exchanged some sort of personal, very close. This is personal, and if they have like some sort of personal belonging or something that represents further commitment. Example, a promise ring or a friendly necklaces. And the last one is deterioration. So this is something like after like few days of relationship, everybody will have like difference of opinions, and that may, in certain cases, it may bring the relationship to an end. So things started to fall apart. So in a romantic relationship, typically after approximately 6 months, like people move out of so-called honeymoon stage, and at a later stage, they will start to notice flaws among each other. So the way they address their that determines the fate of relationship. Clear? And this is coming to barriers of interpersonal relationships are basically physical barriers. Second one is perception, emotional barrier, culture barrier, language barrier, gender barrier, cultural belief, and defensive attitudes. So what is the main purposes of interpersonal relationships is to learn about the self and about the society, to establish and maintain relationships, and to elevate loneliness. So basically, why do we interact with human beings is just to alleviate our loneliness and to influence, control, and direct. And it helps us for diversion, and it helps to meet the needs of others, and it gains confidence and satisfactions, and it provides intellectual and emotional bond with any other people. And types of interpersonal relationships. So basically we have like various types of interpersonal relationship. So the first one is kinship. So kinship, we have like it is something related inside a family is what we call this kinship, and basically it is of like two kinds, that is affinal kinship or marital kinship. So it just includes the relation with our family members. So affinal kinship is what is called as genetically related, that is like consanguinity, as far as example like mother, father, siblings, etc. But whereas the other kind is marital kinship, that is through marriage, that is affinity, as for example like father-in-law, mother-in-law, and relatives through marriage. Okay, and formalized intimate relationships or long-term relationships recognized by law and formalized through public ceremony like marriages. Clear? The next one is non-formalized intimate relationships or long-term relationships such as loving relationships or romantic relationships with or without living together. So if the partners live together, the relationship may resemble marriage, and with the parties possibly called as husband and wife. And the long-term relationship in other countries can become known as common law marriages, although they may not have special status in law. Platonic love, an affectionate relationship into which the sexual element does not enter, especially in cases where one might easily assume otherwise. And the other kind of relationship is friendship, which consists of mutual love, trust, respect, and sometimes based on condition, acceptance, and usually implies the discovery of or establishment of common ground between the individuals involved. The other one is brotherhood and sisterhood. So individuals united in a common cause or having a common interest, which may involve formal membership in a club, organization, association, society, lodge, etc. So this type of interpersonal relationship relates to the comradeship of fellow soldiers in the peace or war. So partners or co-workers in a profession, business, or a common workplace. And the participation in a community. For example, a community of interest or practice. And the association, simply knowing someone by introduction or knowing someone by interaction. So moving on to transactional analysis. So basically what is this transaction analysis is, again, this is interconnected concept with your group dynamics or interpersonal relationships. So it is nothing but understanding, predicting, and controlling the interpersonal relationships. So as we all know, the study of human behavior is very complex and complicated concept. So it is affected by the psychological factors such as perception, learning, personality, and motivation. In addition to these factors, individual behavior affects and affected by the behaviors of others. And one of the major problems in the study of organizational behavior is to analyze and improve the interpersonal relationships. So one basic approach to the study of interpersonal relations in an organizational system is what is called as transactional analysis. So this concept was introduced by Eric Berney, and it is a technique which is used to help people to better understand their own and others' behavior, especially in interpersonal relationships. It is a good method for understanding interpersonal behavior, and it offers a model of personality and a group dynamics of self and its relationship to others that makes possible a clear and meaningful discussion of behavior. So transactional analysis is primarily concerned with the following, that is awareness, analysis of self-awareness, analysis of ego states, analysis of transactions, script analysis, games analysis, and analysis of life positions and stroking. So analysis of self-awareness includes the interpersonal relationships are composed of inter-self. So it is about the self-awareness, understanding about our own self. So self is the core of personality pattern which provides integration. So self-awareness is an important concept as it describes the self in terms of image, both consciousness and unconsciousness. So a diagram which is developed rightly by Joseph Luft and Harrington to look at one's personality, including behaviors and attitudes that can be known and unknown to self and known and unknown to others. So how do we analyze ourselves and how do we understand about others? So this is a Johari window which has like 4 parts. That is, first one is open, which means the attitudes and behavior which is known to others and also to ourselves. The second part is blind, which is the attitudes and the behaviors which is unknown to ourselves but which is known to others. The third one is hidden, wherein our own behaviors and attitudes which is known to ourselves but unknown to others. The last part is unknown, that is our behaviors and attitudes which is totally unknown to ourselves as well as to others. So next is analysis of ego states. So the ego plays a very important role in a human behavior. So the people interact with each other in terms of psychological positions or behavior patterns known as ego states. So ego states are person's way of thinking, feeling and behaving at the time. So there are 3 important ego states, that is childhood, adulthood and parenthood. So the person of any age have these ego states will be varying. So a healthy person is able to move from one ego state to another. That is, when a person is able to easily adapt himself to the other stages of ego, and he is said to be a healthy person. So as I told you, we have like childhood, adulthood, and parenthood, which determines our personality. The first one is parent ego state. So the parent ego state literally means the values and the attitudes and the behaviors of parents, and as an integral part of the personality of an individual. So these people tend to talk and people and treat others like children. So once if a person becomes a parent, they tend to have their attitude like they treat the others just like their children. So the characteristics of a person with parent ego state are judgmental, rule maker, moralizing, overprotective, and indispensable. And the second stage is adult ego stage. So the adult ego state is authentic, direct, reality based, fact seeking, and problem solving. So they assume the human beings equally worth and responsible. The process of adult ego state is like formation goes through one's own experiences and continuously updating attitudes left over from childhood. So people with adult ego state gather relevant information, carefully analyze it, generate alternatives, and make logical choices. The last one is child ego state. The child ego state is characterized by the very immature behavior. So just imagine what kind of attitude a child will have. So the important features of child ego state are creativity, anxiety, depression, dependence, fearfulness, joy, and emotional sentiment, etc. So third one is analysis of transaction. A transaction is basically unit of social interaction. So the heart of transactional analysis is the study and diagramming of exchanges between two persons. So thus where a verbal or non-verbal stimulus from one person is being responded by another person, a transaction occurs. And transaction analysis can help us to determine which ego state is most heavily influencing other person, other behavior, and the behavior of the other people with whom we interact. So depending on the ego states of the persons involved in the transactions, they may be like types of transactions. So the first one is complementary transaction. Second one is cross transaction, ulterior transaction. So in complementary transactions, we can see both the people are operating from the same ego state. So there can be 9 complementary transactions, that is adult to adult transactions, adult to parent transactions, adult to child transactions, parent to parent, parent to adult, parent to child, and child to parent, and um, child to adult and child to child. Okay, and the second one is cross transaction. So a cross transaction is one in which the sender sends message, a behavior on the basis of his ego state, but this message is reacted to be an unexpected ego state on the part of the receiver. So cross communication should be avoided as far as possible. So whenever such transactions occur, communication tends to be blocked and a satisfactory transaction is not accomplished. And the third one is ulterior transactions. So two ego states within the same person will make the one criteria to disguise the other one. So next one is script analysis. That is, in a layman's view, a script is a text or play, motion, picture, or radio or a TV program. So whatever we see in front of our eyes is what we call a script. So in transactional analysis, a person's life is compared to a play and the script is the text of the play. So according to Eric Berne, a script is an ongoing program developed in early childhood under paternal influence, which directs the individual behavior in the most important aspects of his life. So a script is complete plan of living, offering prescriptions, permissions, and structure which makes one winner or loser in the life. The second one is, fifth one is analysis of life positions. So in this process of growing up, people make basic assumptions about their own self-worth as well as about the worth of the significance of the people around them. So just imagine when a person, in what manner he understands himself and what manner he assumes the people around his environment. So the combination of assumptions about self and the other person is called as life position. So transactional analysis constructs the following classifications. That is, we have like 4 possibilities of life positions or psychological positions. See, this is I'm okay and you're also okay. So here, people with this type of attitude, they believe in like the position, they have confidence in themselves as well as they have trust or confidence with the others. That is, I'm also okay and you're also okay. The second one is I'm okay but you are not okay. So this is distrustful psychological position. So always they mean to say they are correct, right? And the third one is I'm not okay but you are okay. So this is common position for those people who feel less about their self when compared to the others. And the last one is I'm also not okay and you're also not okay. So the people in this position tend to feel bad about themselves as well as the whole world as a miserable. So they don't trust others and they have no confidence in themselves. This last one is stroking. So stroking is an important aspect of transactional analysis. So the term stroke refers to giving some kind of recognition to others. So people need strokes for their sense of survival and well-being on the job. And lack of stroking can be negative consequences both on physiological and psychological well-being of a person. And there are 3 types of stroke, that is positive strokes, negative strokes, and mixed strokes. So positive strokes is one where the stroke one feel good, that is positive, that is recognition or approvals are some examples. Negative stroke is where a stroke by which one feel bad or have a negative stroke. So negative stroke hurts physically or psychologically. And a mixed stroke. So this is either positive or negative. So the boss comment to the worker, you did an excellent job, but in spite of your limited experience. The next one is games analysis. So when people fail to get enough strokes at work, they try to variety of things. So one of the most important thing is that they play psychological games. A psychological game is a set of transaction with these characteristics, like the transaction tend to be repeated. They make sense of superficial or social level, or one or more transactions is ulterior. So we have like 3 types of games. Like a first degree game is one which is socially acceptable in the agent circle. The second degree game is one which more intimate, end up with bad feeling. The third degree game is one which usually involve physical injury. So the benefits and utility of transactional analysis are improved interpersonal communication, source of positive energy, understanding ego state, motivation, and organizational development. So now coming to stress management, very important concept for all the human beings, right? So we are going to just discuss these. I'll move fast. So what is basically stress? So as rightly coined by Benjamin Franklin, stress is often termed as a 20th century syndrome. So born out of man's race towards modern progress and its ensuing complexities. So this is how people with stress look like. So the meaning is stress can have a big impact on your body in ways that are felt by just you and in the ways that the world can see. So one of the most visible potentials by the products of stress is weight gain, and many people find themselves to be emotional eaters. So who react to stress by reaching for something, often the wrong things to eat. That is, stress can also create a loss of appetite, which can be a problem as well. So basic signs of stress are physical signs, mental signs, behavioral signs, and job stress signs. So the symptoms of stresses are insomnia, loss of mental concentration, absenteeism, depression, extreme anger and frustration, family conflict, migraine, headaches, and backache. So what are the causes for stresses are job insecurity, high performance demand inside a work, bad boss, workplace culture, personal or family problems, and technological. So whenever our body feels something which is not favorable, then it tries to defend itself. So if this situation continues for a long time, then the body is working overtime. So there are several causes for a stress. For example, when we are under a stress, we are deeply worried about something, right? So the kinds of stress are eustress and distress. So eustress is otherwise called as positive stress, wherein it motivates or it focuses energy. See, when you fail in your goal, then the next step you self-motivate yourself and you focus to re-energize yourself. So that is what is called as basically eustress. So it may be for a short term and it is perceived as within our coping abilities and it feels exciting and it improves our performance. So the results of positive stress are it enables our concentration, it increases our performance, and it energizes you into motion. And second one is distress. So this is totally opposite to eustress. That is, it is a negative stress and it causes anxiety or concern. It can be a short term or a long term. It is perceived as outside of coping ability. So once for all, when you feel like it's done, it's gone, so we can't like cope up, so that is distress. So it feels like very unpleasant and it decreases performance and it can lead to mental and physical problems. And the results are less motivation and it reduces our effectiveness in physical and mental behavioral problems. Apart from these two stresses, we also have acute stress and chronic stress. These are like medical terms, wherein acute stress is it is usually for a short time and maybe due to work pressure or meeting deadlines pressure or minor accident, overexertion, increased physical activity or searching something but you can't misplace it or similar things, etc. So symptoms of this types are tensions, are headaches, back pain, stomach problems, rapid heartbeat, muscle aches, or body pains. And chronic stress, and this is a very harmful kind of stress, wherein it is a prolonged stress that exists for weeks together or months together or even years together. So this stress is due to poverty, broken or stressed families and marriages, chronic illness, and successive failures in the life. So people suffering from this type of stress get used to it and may even not realize that are under chronic stress. So it is very harmful, as I said. So in this picture, you can see the x-axis is the stress level and the y-axis is your performance level. So if your stress is low, you'll have a proper sleep and you'll be quite alert enough. But when your stress is high, you'll only have anxiety and you will disorganize around yourself. But when your stress is medium, you'll always be in an optimal position. So the effects of stress is like work-related stress can result in high levels of employee turnover. Employees experiencing stress are more likely to make poor decisions and casual errors. So workplace relations and customer service may deteriorate. So stress busters. So how can we overcome the stress? So this as what you see in this slide is an artificial stress buster. This is not a natural stress buster. When we tend to overcome our stress and when we do something artificially, it will have its own advantages and disadvantages. So artificial stress busters are, so be prepared for the changes. So it is not, we must not fix our mind on one single criteria. So find and provide time to refresh, re-energize and remotivate. Avoid alcohol, smoking and other substances that abuses our health. And positive attitudes towards stressful situations in life. And don't be complacent. That is, don't degrade yourself when you achieve something. Okay, and sit straight and comfortably on your seat and try breathing exercises and try to create visualization. So the advantages of these artificial stress management is less absenteeism due to stress related disorders, less workers compensation loss due to stress related illness or accidents, and improved job performance, less stressful, more efficient workplace, an improved employee attitude, and improved employee overall health. But the disadvantage of this artificial stress management is because it can potentially raise your heart rate and weaken your immune system. And also it can be a factor in poor decision making, because under stress we may not think logically or consider the consequences of the choice. So how can we naturally overcome the stress? How can we relieve our stresses? Stop shallow breathing, create the habit of deep breaths, and visualize your communicate your vision, and laugh, do your goofiest impression, and be aware of the choices, because you always have a choice to say yes or no. Learn to say no, because you cannot do everything you were asked to do. And be thankful, count your blessings, and don't just keep blaming all your uh, things. And do nothing. This is something unusual, that is, do nothing at all. Just close the door, open the window, have a seat, and take a little break from the life. And if your mind is racing, learn to meditate and just let the stress go. And listen to the music. And this is ABC strategy of stress. See, all we have is only daytime and nighttime to work. So we need to plan our work only for the daytime, and we need to manage our life only during the daytime. So if you really have awareness, balance, and control of what you're going to do in the daytime, obviously will not tend to have stress. So enjoy your life as it comes and always be happy. So stress problems are very common.